Cool. So we are done playing with just the Visio basics. We're going to do some network importing first of all, and then we'll show some network examples after that. And then we'll have some resources, stuff you can download, places you can go to learn more. And then at the very end, if we've got time, we'll do the customization. So like we did in the first part, we're going to go to File, and we're going to do a new network. We want to do a detailed network in US units. And it loads our peripherals, and it loads our locations, and it loads our network symbols for switches and routers. Terminal server looks kind of weird. Probe, I don't know what a probe is. I would not like to get one. Servers in 3D.
Wasn't it a Ford?
Huh?
Wasn't it a Ford?
Oh yeah, Ford probe. Yeah. I prefer a Dodge to a probe. So we're going to do a basic network like most people have done in the past. Let's say you've got two servers. You've got a guest, and you've got a Hyper-V host. It's helping us line up there, which is nice. We go and we've got some computers. We're going to bring, these are old school. They really need to update these, I think, with flat screens. That'd be nice. This is 2013, but they've still got us using those.
Yeah, I think yes. There should be flat panels on these.
Yeah, make it kind of like that. And then we'll do this one, do one more of those, and we'll do one more of those. And then we'll do our little trick here. We go to position, that, and that. Oh, that worked great. Sorry. It was evenly distributing them for me, but it was doing it across the whole thing. There we go. Do this one as well. Position, distribute. Okay. So now it's nice and lined up. And I can tell right now we're going to need a little bit more room. So I'm just going to move it over here a little. So there's the diagram. This is a branch office for a company. Hyper-V server and Hyper-V guest. And very, very simple. It's just going to be a domain controller and file server. No big deal. But you have to go in and say, okay, now I'm going to start adding information to these. So you probably, more likely than not, will click it, single click it, and say, this is LOU dash counter. I think you know where I'm going with this, Ken. Right? And you might do a shift enter and say it's 192.168. Shift enter just gives you another line. If you hit enter, it's you may get two lines. You may get a paragraph. So I just use shift enter, and then I click off when I'm done. 192.168 something, and then you do this one, then do this one, then do this one, this one, this one, and then hope that it's all right. Hope you didn't miss any computers as you were doing this, and then your servers. And what happens to networks is they change all the time. And I don't know how many Visio documents I've started that they have changed multiple times before the document got done, especially with the big one. And your point of doing this is your job is not a Visio tech. Your job is IT. And this is just a tool, so you want to do it quick and you want to get it over with. This is another reason why you want the professional version of Visio, because it allows you to do data connections. So through the magic, we're going to disconnect that there, get rid of that, and go. This button right here fits the whole page to the window. I use that quite a bit. And another hack that I didn't show you guys, you can only zoom how far? Trivia question. You can zoom to 396%, right? Not really. If you go to View and do the zoom here, or if you click on the number here, you can type a much bigger number, 1400%, for example. Now you're down into the buttons. You say, I want to go to, and you notice it still says 1400, I want to go to 2000%. What I found is the more items you have on the page, the less you can zoom in. It's I don't know if there's some math behind it in the background that's not going to let you zoom in that high, but you'll have some documents where you'll be able to zoom super far, and then other ones maybe not so much. But now you can see that button is not only green, it actually is green and white, and it's got a little shade, and it's got a black, and and there it's almost 2,000%. So I'll just hit the little line, take us back to 100.
What button?
Yeah, exactly. What button? Well put. So give us the whole document. So there is a data tab here that you do not get on the Joe Blow version of Visio, and this is going to be so quick and easy. You're going to poop your pants when you realize how easy this is. All we have to do is hit link data to shapes, and it will start a wizard for us. But what I found out the hard way is you want to have your data pretty close to right. So I'm going to do it the wrong way first of all, and then I'll show you how to fix it. So here we have our spreadsheet with our customer machines in here. And I've actually added a couple
They say
more.
link data. What do you mean with data? Like this is data?
Well, a spreadsheet is considered data.
Okay, but a minute ago you said link data. You said you had to have professional in order to link data. I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
The professional version of Visio.
Right.
Yep.
But that, when you say linking data, it's...
Yeah. Well, let's run through the wizard. That's a good question. What do we mean by that? So we go to the data tab. We're going to link data to shapes, and it asks us what type of data we want to use. Access database, SharePoint Foundation List, SQL Server database. Ooh, pretty neat. Other database connection, a previously created connection. We're just going to do a workbook because what we have over here is data that was exported from your MSP program. So this one was LabTech. You could use, anything that's going to create a spreadsheet. If you wanted to, you could not just do this. You could use PowerShell. PowerShell will do XML, or it will export to CSV, and you can say, give me all of the computers in this OU, or all of the users. If you're going to create an org chart, pulling it out with PowerShell and turning it into CSV would be pretty handy. Save you a lot of retyping, because then you could pull in the phone numbers, you could pull in the email address, all that stuff. So this is our CSV file that I just happened to open in Excel, and then I saved it in Excel format. I didn't do anything special to it at all. So what data do you want to use? Excel workbook. Okay, where is this Excel workbook? Browse. It's on the S drive. It's under KYSBSUG. It's under is it called demo PCs? Client computers. Where did I save that as?
That's what was that?
I saved it somewhere else because I've got two of these.
You put one up in shapes?
I probably did. KYSBSUG 2013 Visio. Yeah. Surely I didn't put it in shapes, did I? Nope. Oh, it's right there. Client computers. It's the format's different. It's an XLSX. Okay, next. And I've got the document open just for the fun of it. So it's pulling from sheet 1, and it says the first row of columns contains data. Well, this is sheet 1, and the first row does contain all the headers. Sounds good. And next, what columns do you want to include? I don't know, include all of them. What rows? All the ones that have data, I guess, right? I'm an IT guy. I'm not going to read. I'm just going to click next and see what happens. Next. It's asking for a keyed value. So the keyed value that was coming out of LabTech was some computer ID. I don't know what the computer ID. It's an arbitrary number for each asset in LabTech. I would rather have the asset name, not the computer ID, because I know I'm not going to have two servers or two workstations with exactly the same name in a domain. So I'll pick that. But if I wanted to pick computer ID, it would just come up with a number. So I hit next, finish, and I'm sure this isn't going to work, right? Wrong. That's it. It's there. It's done. So this looks surprisingly and shockingly just like the spreadsheet, right? And just to show that it is the same, we've got LOU UPS. We're going to go back over here and change that to LOU UPS 1. Right? And we come over here and, oh, it didn't update. Right? Well, you have to tell it manually refresh the data. It refreshes it, tells you if it completed, and now we have LOU UPS 1. So you can see this is the real deal. The connection is there. So how do I get all that chocolatey goodness into my Visio?
Click the mouse somewhere.
Any ideas? Any ideas?
Drag.
Link it to your shape tag.
Drag, ding ding. Yes. It's just that easy, as they say.
You drag each
I'm going to drag my Hyper-V server to that. See how it lights up? Lights up. Let's go. It will connect it, and then I get a little link here. So remember before we were talking about, did you get all your computers on the list? Did you have them all? You have a visual indicator, so we'll say that's my server.
Oh, a little link, okay.
Yeah, and let's see, and then we'll just grab our client computers, drag that one.
So it automatically adds each heading as shape data?
Oh, yes, it does. It has each heading is shape data. It does more than that. So now, unless you are a owner of a telescope, it's pretty hard to see that right now because of the screen resolution. So I'm going to hit an X and turn off the external data, and it'll just uncheck this box right here. So I can turn it back on if I want later on. And I'm going to collapse this, and I'm going to collapse this. And now that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and go to 100%.
Yeah, I say, go ahead a little more.
Yeah, a little bit more. There we
There you
go.
go.
There you go. Now you guys can see. So it gave us asset name, which I don't really like that, right? And it gave me computer ID. Again, you know how it defaulted to that computer ID field and it has recommended it, and I'm like, I don't want that garbage. Well, yes, you can change this. You can say, you can right-click it and go to Data and go to Edit Data Graphic. The shape data just tells you what is in, so we'll hit shape data first, and you can see that you actually have all this information. Demo customer, the asset name, it's a workstation or a server, what type of motherboard it is, what the asset, it pulled all that in. Even though you can't see it, it's still attached. So if you move this shape around, move it to another tab or whatever, it's going to keep that data with it. So that's what the shape data does. What we're interested in is not necessarily the shape data itself, but the graphic data. So if we hit edit graphic data, we see some fields. We see an asset name. Now I can edit the item for the asset name, but it's not going to let me change what it's called. Okay? Which is a little frustrating. So let's cancel that, and we'll cancel this. We'll go back to our spreadsheet and say asset name. We're going to change that to host name, right? Because it's a host. And we hit save, and then we come back over here to Visio. It's a host. A PC on the network is a host. So this, when you say what's your computer name, and they say gateway, like, no, your host name. What's your Windows name, your BIOS name, or your NetBIOS name, right? So we're going to change the host name, and we say, well, let's go back to data, and let's refresh the data, and it says a unique identifier was not returned by the data source. Why is that?
You changed it.
Because I changed the name, because I'm a moron, right? So that's what I'm saying. You can, if you change the name of the fields, it's better to do that on the front end. So let's do skip refresh. Go back over here, and what was that called before? Asset name. Change it back to asset name and save it, and see if we can recover from the error.
You got asset spelled wrong.
Oh, I spelled it wrong.
Yeah.
Haha. ASSET. Is that right?
I think so.
Okay. Save. Yeah. Or is it agent name? That's what it is, agent name. Maybe it's asset name.
Your next column's agent. Oh.
Yeah, I probably, when I undid that, I probably... No, skip refresh. Try one more. Let's call it asset name. Oh, I didn't save it. Save. This is the fun of live demos. Ah, it's completed. Okay. So, catastrophe averted, right? So we know we can't change that field because it's a primary field. But what if we did this? What if we said, well, I'm Mr. Cool IT guy, and over here where it says asset agent asset tag, I just want to insert a row in here, and I'm going to call this IP address, right? And I'm going to start my workstations at 192.168.40.100, right? So now I got to type all those other numbers in a row, right? Wrong.
Drag.
I just click it, drag, and there is all of my 100 through 105. And I'm going to take my Hyper-V server, and I'm going to start it at 192.168.40.10 and do the same deal. Grab these servers.
2010 or 4010?
Oh, yeah. I hate you, Lee. Thank you for pointing out my mistake. I mean, thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Verbally said 40. Like 20. I'm like, oh.
Well, here we go. My demo network at home is 20. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I've added a field, right? Should be okay. Didn't change anything. Come back over here to Visio. Go to data. Refresh the data. Does it error out? No. It works just fine. And now I go here and I say, all right, so I'm going to go to data. I'm going to edit the data graphic. And I want to do a new item. Yeah. And the new item is, what's it called? IP address. There it is. And I'm going to display it as text because I don't want it to get, crazy, right? And I just hit OK. There it is. IP address. Apply. Now when I hit apply, it's applying it to all shapes with this graphic, this data graphic. So I didn't have to go back in and go to each one of these and change it all. It's going to do that for me, which is nice. What's not nice? How many computers have an IP address of 0? The correct answer is all of them. Why do they all have a 0? Because when the link was initially created, that field didn't exist. So I'm saying, think of your fields that you're going to use if you need an IP address or a MAC address or a warranty expiration date or something like that. Make sure those items are in your spreadsheet before you do the link. You can change the values later on, but it's better to have 50 fields that you don't need than to have one field and need it and then add it later on and have it break. So put some thought into whatever.
So it won't bring the IP actually in?
We're going to fix that, Lee.
Oh,
Okay. So this is why I'm showing you the wrong way so you can remember I don't ever want that to happen. I want my spreadsheet to be complete. Even if it's like asset tag, it's an empty column. Make sure your empty columns are there ahead of time. So we'll go back over to Visio. We'll go to view, data. Do our external data window. Now watch what happens if we take LOU sales 2 and we go to our data and we tell it to unlink it. Okay? So data unlink from row, and we notice, boom, it disappeared. We lost our little link. Now it's still up there, right? And if I go to data and tell it to refresh, it'll refresh, and it's still up there. So it gets a little confusing. But if I take that and I bring it back up and click, now my IP address fits. I've got my IP address. So you would have to go in on those items, go to data and tell it to unlink it from the row and then relink it.
What's that 3 in there?
192.168.40.103. It wrapped.
Oh, it was 1. Okay.
Yeah, because of how close remember I was saying they're too close.
Right.
So that's what it was doing. And you can say, well, I really don't want that computer ID. So data, edit data graphic, and say asset name, just get rid of that computer ID. I don't need it. And hit OK. And now I've gotten rid of that field. So I also don't need it to say asset name or host name. I'm smart enough to know that I do usernames in all lowercase. I do computer and host names in all caps. I do web addresses in all lowercase, if at all possible. So I would just like the name, right? And have it kind of stand out a little bit, a little bling. All you do, right click it, data, edit data graphic, and I can go into that and say, well, I want to change it. Instead of being displayed as text, I'm going to edit the item and say do it as like a call out, kind of like this, like a call out too. And hit OK, hit apply, hit OK. Well, now I have asset name. It stands out a little bit. Well, there's other formats in there under the data graphic that you can go through and say, well, I want one where I just want a value label. That's what I want. So the value label just shows whatever the value of that field is. In this case, it would be the host name. And then we hit OK. It applies it to everybody, and now it's LOU sales 2, LOU camera, and it's pulling the formatting in there. So you might have to go in and change your formatting to where it's something you like. with me so far?
You don't invest too much time in a sense.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Well, I mean, if this is what you do for a living or part of your job description, that's a big difference. Because I spent so much time playing with Visio to do the comic, I learned all kinds of little stuff, which will be the third part. So with what we learned in the first part of how to connect our PCs to our network, and now we've actually got a spreadsheet that is connected, and I can look at the spreadsheet, this data source, and see that I've got 2 servers on here that aren't being shown. Let's get it a little bit sexier, shall we? So we're going to open our stencil here and bring it back over there, snap it, there we go. And we don't need our data sheet right now, we're going to change that. So these are very generic, and if you were to hand this to an employee who is not technically adept and say, go in and find LOU server and reboot it. If they take this document and they're not going to see a server that looks like that, are they? I mean, it's just not going to happen. So you would like to have a visual representation in a, this is a logical diagram, but it's even more important if you've got a physical diagram. If you're doing a diagram with a server rack, and you need to know how big is that server, how much space, you're planning your space, and it's not just your cable links, it's your heating and your cooling, and it's your UPS, your battery backups, and all that stuff. So you want it to be realistic. So under more shapes, there's a website called visiocafe.com, and a lot of, it's a big collection of free stencils. So Dell has some up there. HP, I don't know if HP's are up there or not, but Microsoft's Microsoft.com/download or download.microsoft.com, I don't remember which it is. They have stencils for Exchange, for SharePoint, for things like that. So over time you collect these stencils to make it more visually representative of what you're actually doing, because you want it to be as close to reality as possible. I mean, you're not going to paint the walls in the server room the same color, but the closer it is to what it is in reality, the easier it is to grasp, the easier it is to retain what that was. Because you might look back and say, oh, that was a picture, that was the server rack that had 3 racks, and all the ones on the left were gray. I don't know. So let's go to more shapes, and the shapes that I've got here are way more than what most people have. By default, you get, you know, all this business stuff, the brainstorming and all that, and then there's flow charting, and then there's maps and floor plans, so that, you know,
there's so much in there. It's like, oh,
there's gobs and gobs. So then I come in here and I add all my crazy shapes, which go all the way down here,
You get all those.
and then I've got like all these ones here from Dell and all these ones from HP, and tons here from the net. These are actually pretty old on the NetZoom stencils. This is why you need a really big monitor, and this machine is not one. I have tons of stuff from Panduit, so cable management and routing and racks and all that kinds of stuff. One of my favorites is this, and I hate to say this being a Microsoft guy, is the one from VMware, and it's the stencil called Icons. It is really cool. So we'll just click it. Internal error, trying to close the file and restart Visio. Okay, so let's save drawing 5. Save it. Yes, save. Doo-doo-doo. And then let's try and reopen Visio.
You know, I installed Visio a while ago and it did not put a tile on the start screen.
Interesting. Well, so let's do drawing 5. Should be right back where we were. Probably not a great idea to install brand new software the day of a demo. I installed Veeam on here and I was like, oh, I gotta try it. It's either version. Let's try again. More shapes. My shapes. Down here to VMware icons. That's okay. That's why I always have one in the oven. Dual wireless, state modified. Oh, I didn't save that one. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. Let's see if it'll let me load any of these. Get rid of that. Glad I'm recording this. It makes me feel smart. Let's do Dell Sonic Wall. That's nice. Let's just go to Dell, and we'll say this is a Dell Power Edge. We're going to go with the tower servers. There we go. Much better. So something you'll notice on the Dell stencils is they have these little README things here. If we drag and drop it onto the page, it's actually some valuable information. What I don't like is, remember what we were doing before where we were taking a diagram? What's the first thing that comes up? A README. So when you've got a Dell tab open, instead of adding servers, you may end up with this little README thing instead. So, but all right, we're going to pick, that's our virtual server. This is our Hyper-V server. Ken, you're a guinea pig. What server are we going to use for this? It's a branch office.
T110.
T110. Let's see, do we have a T110 in here? We do have a T110. So there is our T110 right there. So I'm going to click that, go back to change shape, and you notice this great thing here. There's the Dell README again. So I'm going to take our T110 and I'm going to move it up above the line where it says quick shape. Does that make sense? Now, look over here, do a quick test. Get anything? Get anything? Get anything? Nope. Let's see. Click that first. Change shape. Computers and monitors 3D. So let's go to Dell. Yeah. So I would consider that a pain in the butt and a waste of time and a bug. So I don't know if you noticed, but I had a my own template over there of stuff that I've taken. I'll do a drawing and then make sure there's only one of everything, and then just drag it over into my own template. It's the things I use the most common. It's going to be pretty much a daily basis. I come up with custom ones. So we could do it the old school way. We'll bring this over. There's our server. We're going to take this, go to our data, and unlink it from the row reluctantly, and delete it. Turn on our external data window, and now we see that our Hyper-V server is unlinked. Click, and it's linked. And does that look weird to anybody? Down kind of low, that here's kind of in the middle. Again, that's the yellow dot determines where we can move it. On these we can move them up to where they're even, or we can take it and move it to where it's underneath. But we're kind of limited with what we can do with it. So let's put it there. So now if you say Mr. IT helper slash the guy who takes out the trash, or the secretary, or whoever's going to reboot it, you know, she can have that document and say that's the one on the bottom left of the document looks just like that. Because I've had phone calls with people before where you try and tell them, like on the old HP MLs, like 350s, you tell them to hit the power button. They're like, I swear to you, there's not a power button on the front of this, because they had the little door on it. They completely closed it, and I was like, there has to be a power button. And if I had that document, I'd say, oh well, that makes a difference. Now here's why I say that makes a difference. If we go to more shapes again, and we go over to Dell, my shapes. And again, these are downloaded, so they're not something that's going to be in the typical one. If we go to rack servers and turn that on, it'll put a little checkbox next to it. It'll add it here for us. So now in these servers, when we bring in like an R710, for example, or an R715, R720, we have an R710 with the front open. We have an R710 with the front closed. We have an R710 with small form factor. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see these. These are extremely, extremely detailed. And when I say extremely, I mean 1000%. I'm saying the pins in the USB connectors. So the professional Visio stencils that are done by the manufacturers are usually pretty good. They're not all that good. Sometimes they're pretty junky. The nice thing about these is if you did want to get crazy, Dell has the hard drives. So you can actually snap in and say these are 15K SAS, 2.5-inch, whatever. So this is a small form factor one. Oh, too far. So there's a small form factor with the drive numbers. Here's a large form factor. So you're conceptually building the server rack before you actually physically do it. So not just the space and all that. And then if you have the front on it, oops, too far. You can see what it looks like with the front, and you can see, you know what? I actually can't get to the power button with the front on that. And then you can say, oh, I need a key, need to unlock it, who's got the key, that kind of thing. So
We lost it.
we lost the key. All right. So that is that's one of the things. And again, you can drag your data. You can manually go in and type in all those fields, all that shape data if you want. But it's so much easier just to have a spreadsheet, and you can keep the spreadsheet updated. And you open up your document, update it, and if you renamed the server, or if you changed the server and moved it from one rack to the other, you can do that. All right. So let's do one other thing here to our drawing. We'll get rid of all these guys. And we'll take our, I'm really going to try to, let me open another document, one that's got it. Open a lot of documents. Oh, we might come back to that one. So I won't belabor that. You can do the same thing with virtual servers if you're used to the VMware ones where you have like the 3 different colors, whether it's the compute layer, the OS layer, and the I don't think it's compute. One's OS, one's virtual machine, I think one's data. So you see them with either 2 or 3 levels on there. So any questions, anything you guys want to see about this before we start looking at some real life examples? Nope. Okay. So let's do the first one. This is Middletown office. So this is my old office. We were moving offices at a previous job, and I wanted to see
More than once.
yeah, more than once. I wanted to kind of get a layout of where the workbench tables would go and where the electrical outlets were and things like that. So I just took some of the other shapes, drag and drop them over there, and you can see when I was done, there was cubicles, and I can drag a desk in there, and I can spin it around and say, well, I'm going to put this desk over here, and if it's actual size. Some furniture manufacturers have the templates for their furniture, so you can actually go in and snap it all together. Same thing you can do with the network. So nothing too crazy about that. Take the chairs, and this is a table and chairs, so I could actually say, you know what, I want to ungroup that, and it's going to sever the link to the master object. I say that's okay, I don't care. Now I can actually pull that chair out, or pull the table out over there, and move the chair over there, and spin it around. And I'm going to steal his chair and put it over there. So you can have some fun with it. So nope, not going to save that. The next one we will look at is, it was at that same office. It's a swing migration. It was a lab setup. If you know anything about labs, things tend to change quite a bit, quite frequently, and the next thing you know, you're stuck, and you're trying to say, how did I have that set up before? I've torn it down a couple times. So this was in that office. The blue part was my physical office at a Hyper-V host with 2 physical NICs in it, one going to the production network, one going to the test network, and then I had a virtual switch here. These guys were using it, and then I had a final DC over there. And you can't let once you do the swing, you can't let the original DC see the final DC, because they're going to have the same name. And so this was just a mock-up that I printed out, and so when I remembered what was the IP address of that Linksys, and this was all something that was portable. I could take this Hyper-V server was a laptop, so this would have been nicer if I had put a actual laptop diagram in there. But I could take all this with me on site, because this is just a little $50 Linksys, nobody cares, and share that with people. Next, there's IKEA standing desk. Nobody cares about this. This is not a network diagram. This was a discussion with a customer where they said, well, we just bought a stronger wireless. What do you mean I can't use my laptop from the parking lot? So I tried to show him in a way he could understand. Everybody has a cell phone. They all get the signal bars. So you'd say, well, you know what? When you have a regular wireless, the signal from the wireless has to travel, and then your laptop has to send the signal back. And the further away you get, the worse the signal gets. He goes, I understand that. I said, you get out here, there's no signal. Well, do the same thing. You got a stronger wireless access point, and it's shooting the signal all the way over here, but your laptop isn't any stronger. So when it says, hey, I need this web page of this file, the signal doesn't make it all the way back to the building. He's like, oh, okay. So that was a thing that I could have sketched out on a piece of paper, but I figured if I send it to him, it's nice. Anything that you're going to repurpose, use for more than one client, or use more than one time for multiple, the same client, I like to create a document for it. Because it's just it's a good time investment. So next time you can just say, hey, send them this. So if I had the same discussion with another person in the company or another customer, that is no longer discussion. That was an accident impact. Let's see.
Accident angle.
Yeah, I'll show you guys that one real quick. Remember I was talking about the map? This was the map. So when I had my car accident last year, the police said I was in this lane, and they said I swerved across 4 lanes of traffic after I got hit and hit somebody on the other side. And I'm like, no. And no matter how I tried to explain it, he wasn't getting it. It's like if I veered to the left and hit somebody, why is the entire left side of my car without a scratch? So to explain how that happened, I said, I'm coming, and I just drew a line. Here was my car. I was the second one at the light, and I just had, I went to here, and I just picked a little line and told it to drag it out there, and I made it dotted, and then I drag a line here, and this is 90 degrees, and so I just did a triangle, and it said, oh, that's 55-degree angle. So when this guy passed out or whatever and hit the gas and hit me, then my truck goes doo 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 and spins and ends up over here. So
by the way, one of my customers, retired Metro police officer, accident investigator. That's all he does now full time for a living, self-employed, works out of his house, is
stuff like that. Yeah.
With fully animated. I mean, when he gets done, it's a video showing the vehicles moving, showing the angle from any place you want to look from, and it shows you what happens.
Well, I sent this nice document to my attorney
like
and the cop, and he sent back a note that says, report stands as written. So it was a waste of time. Here's one more fun one. When my daughter had her wedding, we come on, double click. We needed to figure out how to lay out the tables and how many people there were going to be and room for the dance floor. And I wasn't going to be there to do it, obviously, because I'm in the wedding. So I had my wife and daughter measure the building. So they went down there, and then I figured out. I just pulled in 8-foot tables and all the chairs and figured out how. Instead of people moving all these tables around, because there's 28 tables, 27 plus 3 up here. So instead of them moving all the tables, nope, that's not going to work. I just did it on the computer and said, oh, okay, this is how I want it. And do we have enough room to dance? I don't know. And then I draw a box, and it tells me that's 30 by 30, and there's where the cake table is. So you can make your own stuff if you want to. So WAN multiple connections. This one has been scrubbed of names. You'll be happy to know. This is another one where you're trying to explain to the business owner what redundant internet does. And so you say you have all these branch offices, and they have routers that have T1s or fibers or bonded T1s or whatever, and they're all connected to this MPLS cloud. Well, if the MPLS cloud goes down, how does a backup internet work? Your internet went down, right? And we say no, because on the router we have a cable modem which takes another direction to the internet and then comes into the data center and back on the MPLS cloud that way. So you actually have a T1 and cable, T1 and cable. So that is a picture that we use for one client, but now you can show other people and say this is how it works and change it. So this is a good example of, in that alignment we did, there's no alignment for an oval with this many pictures. Or this many items. So there was a method I used to come up with that, which is for part 3. And we're getting close on time. We'll see. So there's that one. Server racks. This is one that's in progress right now. just like when I was talking about the wedding reception, you don't want to play musical chairs and be moving all these tables around because they're really heavy and there's a lot of them. Servers are the same way. I'm sure you know that servers are very heavy. And
some of them are terribly heavy.
yeah, and so
Especially the older ones.
so trying to figure out, will it work? Can you fit it there? All that. So this is a set of server racks here, and you can see I have a half rack here full of batteries, and there's these are patch panels, and these are switches. There's some more switches and cable organizers there. There's some other servers, and again, because we're using Dell stuff, we're actually using the factory. Come on, zoom already. Because we're using the factory stencils, you get detail all the way down to the drive numbers, the lights, the USB connectors, and these are based on the exact model number. And so I've actually I can snap and unsnap the lids from those for the cable management if I want. And then you could go in and number that port, or if you were drawing a connection and say, well, I really do want to connect to a certain spot on a certain because I've got a cable here, I need to restack it. But you could say I want to connect from this port on this switch to an actual NIC on a machine. But right now I don't have that set up.
Yeah, Panda's expensive.
Yep, it's expensive. Future hardware considerations. This was another real life client. Data has been scrubbed where we said, okay, you guys got a server rack. It's nice that you've got one. It took a long time before I was confident enough to tell them, did you know that your servers are put in your server rack backwards? And they didn't believe me. I had to show them where it said front and back on it.
The rack was backwards?
The servers were backwards. So it's just some thinking. You got two Dell R710s, and here's some considerations. So if we just give them a laundry list, a piece of paper, and we say, this is all the stuff you need to do, they might get overwhelmed. But being able to visualize it and say, you might want a sand, and here's what it would do, and here's where the sand would go. And you should probably get another server for BDR, like we were talking about earlier. And this server would, be less expensive to do this, and some other considerations. And they can see where they've got room for growth and where they're going to put their batteries and that kind of thing. So the question marks are, are you going to do that? We don't know. Do you want to put a multi-point server in here? Multi-points don't need an R710. They're designed for, high-end workstation type situations.
Is it going to be another multi-point, or is it toast?
That's a great question, Lee. You could talk about RDS or whatever. So it's another real-life example. Here is one of my personal favorites. This is a P2V roadmap. When you have a complicated project, part of the issue is scheduling, and you've also got issues with resources. So you have milestones when you're doing a project to say, this is how far I want to get. So what we did in a way that we could understand and the client could understand is we started off with their physical servers. This is that same rack you just looked at, but this is a project plan. And Microsoft calls these swim lanes. So if you watch the Olympics, you swim from one end of the pool back, and projects, we just swim to the right. And then we have these columns that are going over top of the swim lanes that are telling us this is what the is going to be accomplished in this phase. So at the end here, that's why I got these right aligned. This is your existing. This is where we did a swing migration. Then we did some P2Vs. We P2V their LOB and whatever. So this shows here's server number 1. Here's server number 2. And here's another server. The colors that I picked are based on what that server is at this point. Existing. The LOB was a bare metal. There's a Hyper-V here, so at some point you could just follow it and say, well, in this phase, whatever that is, this server ended up going from being bare metal to being P2V'd into a Hyper-V virtual machine on this server. Now, if you had to read that or type it out to where somebody could understand that, and most of the time you just say, we're getting close. We've started on this, but this way people can actually follow the bouncing ball. This was a crazy network because they had a SQL server installed on bare metal, and then they put VMware server on it, on a SQL server, and then they virtualized 2 old machines. So that's part of what we did is we took in this was phase 1, this is phase 2, phase 3. In phase 3, we P2V'd these servers over here onto the project server, but you notice they didn't get done until the next phase. So it wasn't like it just happened right here. It actually took a little time to get that done. And then this server was still bare metal. We P2V'd it, and then we wiped and reloaded it and put Hyper-V on it, and then moved all those things off of the project server. So, and we also did a swing migration in the middle of this too. So you can take a very complicated, if you looked in ConnectWise or Word and had all this stuff written out as far as what you were going to do, trying to explain to someone, and then I color-coded the backgrounds based on whether or not that was happening during business hours or after business hours. So it becomes a very comprehensive document for communicating with people and saying, this is where it goes, this is when it happens, and all that stuff. It's a wireless. I'll show you that one. It's no big deal. This is another explain to the business owner how you can have 2 wireless networks and in multiple places, because they're used to having their wireless router at home. They understand that, and they may even have a fancy enough router that has a guest. So this is not a technical representation, but it's kind of a visual representation for them, where we say, look, here's your company name, and here's your servers, and here's all your server traffic, because they're like, well, I don't want them on my guest network, or I don't want them on the same network as my business. And so actually the connection here is the Sonic wall was handling all the traffic, to just show them the guests have their own IP subnet, right? And your production is its own subnet. And everybody's going out to the internet through the same way. You're not on a separate way out to the internet, but these wireless routers are on both networks. They're physically connected to this subnet, and they're connected to this subnet as well. And so that kind of helped them visually understand. So technically you would look at that and go, no, that's not right. That's not.
So you're saying each router you're using routers that have guest connections on?
Yeah. They actually would do both.
Some of the new ones I noticed I haven't used one like that yet.
Yeah. So that's basically what and these routers were ASUS routers. We looked at Cisco, and they didn't want to spend Cisco kind of money. They just needed better coverage. They didn't want to have dead spots in the building. So we did a heat map of the building, basically walk around with the laptop, and clicked on different spots, and it did readings, and then it would Ekahau heat map was the program we used. And then that way we could show a before and an after. This is what you guys look, because when you don't have the high-end money to spend for this, sometimes you got to do with what you got. And this was one of those instances. Close. Client server rack, that's the same rack with just some descriptions in it. Storage diagram. This is a good one. I'm kind of proud of this. Another business owner discussion, trying to help them understand what's going on. This is not the same customer, even though you see two Dells. Oh, yes, it is. The same customer. You see 2 Dells, and so they say, okay, you've seen the picture of the rack. You know that that's what the server looks like. They say, yes. They say, well, did you know, Mr. Customer, that there are 3 more machines running inside of that, and there's 4 more machines running inside the other one, and this is how much disk space they have, and this is how much memory each one has, and these are virtual disks, these are physical disks, these are processors, and your BDR, this is how much it has. Because they're saying, well, I'll try to paraphrase here. We got 2 servers that are identical. You just bought another one that looks just like it, and you're trying to tell me that one server won't do what the other servers do. Why is that? Well, you're trying to understand. This is a BDR. Its job is it's a spare tire. It's for backup. It's not a third server in a cluster. And so when you see all these virtual machines, and you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disks there, and 5 disks there, and you come down here, and there are 2 disks, 2 7200 RPM SATAs, they can finally start to put it together and say, oh, well, if we wanted, to do all this, we would need another processor, we would need more RAM, we would need more disk space, and they could virtually see it. So I've kept hold of this one because you might have to go back and change it. And we also put in here how much was free. Because, well, how close are we to running out? Well, you've got a gig free on there, or actually it's a terabyte free there. You got 662 gigs for you, 10 gigs. So we had, this was the room we had for growth. Upside down SBS. This one is a different customer. This is another perfect example of a customer who hires somebody who doesn't know anything about SBS, and they do this. They install SBS on the bare metal, and then they turn on the Hyper-V role. And then they put an RDS server on it. Because you used to be able to do terminal services a long time ago on SBS.
2000.
In 2000. Surely in 13 years, you know, technology would have changed to get better. No. So in this one, we did a similar thing, 3 disks in a RAID 5, and just tried to show you have the motherboard, then the BIOS, then the hypervisor, communicating to the customer, here's the problem. Your domain controller is trying to do all this job, and here's how your disks are. And what I did with these is actually took a standard icon and then I just resized it, so to represent bigger drives, smaller drives. That makes it easy for them to wrap their head around. And then say this is how you should be: motherboard, BIOS, hypervisor, disks. Then you've got your Hyper-V server, then your domain controller, and these guys are beside each other. Now we know. Again, it's a business owner discussion. Technically, these should be beside it, not on top of it, but, you know, we're not going to go down that road. Client computers, I think that is all the, yes, that is all the demos I'm going to show you in the recording. I'll show you some other stuff that's not in the recording. And any questions about that? No. So when you are figuring out what you're going to draw, you're always doing it with your end audience in mind. It's not just this is what I want and this is what I need and this is what I think is cool. If you're doing it in your own time, it's not a big deal if you got time to kill. But if your customer is paying for you, you can't spend all day doing this, obviously. So you need to get enough information. You want to invest enough time into it to where it's a quality product that hopefully you can reuse. And not just reuse the skills, but hopefully reuse the templates and things like that. But also, you want it to be a good balance. Your end users are in mind. So if you're doing your, you're talking to a C-level, like a CIO, he doesn't need to see a Dell 710. If you just have a server, he's probably going to be okay with that. You don't need that level of whatever. If you're trying to sell a pretty big project to somebody and you know there's one more decimal place than that customer's used to, maybe it's worth putting a little extra effort into it to give them, you know, a quality presentation, a warm and fuzzy about this is what it's going to look like. And more importantly than the warm and fuzzy is if there is a miscommunication between what they said they wanted a SAN and you said okay, and what they meant was a NAS. Big price difference between a SAN and a NAS. So I mean that's an extreme example, but you want to be able to uncover any possible roadblocks, misconceptions, roadblocks from a physical standpoint. It won't fit, I don't have enough ports, that kind of thing. Actually, I am going to show you one under the do not distribute. This will kind of lead into our third one, but we'll stop recording before then. This is a document that was generated for a non-company person to use. So each one of these squares represents a room, and each one of these items is exactly what it looks like that's going in that room. So if we go in here and say in this room, the location is the front counter, they're getting a PC, they're getting this monitor, a keyboard, a mouse. There's going to be 5 power cables that go in there. There's going to be 4 network cables. There's a USB cable connecting the I/O gear to the printer. This printer is connected through a network cable. This printer is connected through a network cable. You need a power strip, a card reader, and 1 VGA cable. That is pretty hard to screw up, right? You would hope. You would hope. I mean, in a perfect world.
Where's your battery backup?
Well, you don't do battery backup on PCs.
I don't want every single.
I know you do, Lee. It's because you're a responsible person. They don't even get a surge. These guys get a power strip. That's it. In the wiring room, yeah, we got a battery backup, a couple power strips, we got a switch, sonic wall, and patch cable, and all this other stuff. You know, how much cable we need. And then over here, you know, all these power cords and all that stuff. You know, 24. I just put 24 down. I'm not going to drag 24 of those over. What I really like about doing it this way, when you create your own custom stencils, is when you're done, if you do it right, you get an inventory. You can pull a legend over, create your own items, because you notice these are photographs. This is not, and you can tell by looking at that. You know, the Dells looked really nice, but they were a vector diagram. They were not an actual photograph. So these are photographs. These are things I found on Google, and I created stencils for them. And the difference is when you bring them over on the custom ones, you have to drag and drop the first one onto this legend, and then from that point on, it keeps track of it. Does that make sense? And there's a difference here. What's the difference between the power cord and the network cables?
There's 3 wires on this.
The network cable is transparent in the middle. You can see through it. You can see the stuff behind it. The power cord, you can't. There's a reason for that. And that is part of our part 3. But just a baseline, kind of an overview of it's. Somebody could say, let the Dell, I know it has a 2 in the number and ends in DN. From looking at a box, looking at an inventory list or a packing slip, those printers are kind of, I get them confused all the time. You see a physical picture of them, you know, oh, that's the one with the big thing on top, the scanner. So who are you communicating with? How much information do they need? Make their job easy so that they can do it and not come back to you and mess it up and then you have to do it. Or make it easy for them to understand the concept of what you are presenting. What are the benefits? If you're doing a Hyper-V replica, they don't know what that is. Well, just show them. We've got servers in site A, we've got servers in site B. It's going to copy over there. The servers in site B don't have as much horsepower, so you're not going to be running as fast, but you're at least going to be running instead of being down for a day while someone restores all your backups to another location. All right, well, I'll stop that, and then we'll move on.